BIP of Bizarre Interest Productions, and we need to get back to that bingo sheet, shall we? And since the topic works for black women, romance, women, and romance, let's talk about bad girls, shall we? Wikipedia aggregates that the bad boy archetype is a cultural archetype of men or male characters who behave in a less than ideal expectation of narratives. Depending on the connotation, the bad boy is a type of character who rejects authority and traditional moral standards, following their own unique code of ethics that can unsettle those around them. Despite their questionable or near criminal habits, okay, let me put this in my own words. I say they're the type of characters whose actions can lean morally gray, but in terms of presentation, and when done right, the execution can make them relatable or even likable. I'm not going to give you guys a rundown about the rest of the history, but whenever you think of bad boys, they're usually morally gray, dark attire, tall, dark, and handsome, and I'll get to that last point later. And traditionally, the good or well-written ones are sympathetic. Their actions do not go too far in the point of redemption to see their path to the good side if they start as an anti-villain, and their actions and motivations help us understand them, but they also seek to balance and counter the rest of the cast. The reason why they're so controversial is because of the execution of the more popular trends, with the combination of romance and fantasy, as well as dark romance and thrillers with romantic subplots becoming exposed to the main consciousness in books and fiction, aka the rise in the archetype of the dark, mysterious, powerful, at 5'8" alpha hero bad boy who is brooding, cold, stoic, and blurs the line between protective and possessive, with even the more likable members of this trope being categorized as being formulaic, and at worst the examples are either toxic, manipulative, does questionable things that crosses the line but is framed as a good thing, and are either controlling or abusive. This ranges from Edward stalking Bella in Twilight, to Rhysand intoxicating his future wife and not telling her about her pregnancy, being able to end her life in the Aquastar series, to a guy bending over his love interest in shark-infested waters and Does It Hurt, to the book Tilly Cole wrote where the MMC is a member of the KKK, to after having the main love interest hooking up with her for a bet and taking the bed sheets where she lost her virginity on the sheets, to Colleen Hoover's romance novels, and I don't even have to bring up It Ends With Us, when November 9th literally has the love interest responsible for burning and fetishizing her scars, and a book series that basically involves 4 dudes basically harassing and assaulting their love interest for like the first book, and the girls only start fighting back by the second book, but it's okay because they're going to end up with one of them or the teacher that feeds off of them without their consent. It is not okay, and I can keep going, but that's kind of the point. It's not that the bad boy trope is bad. The problem is that it's being executed consistently terribly. So the point, people think the term basically means guy who wears leather jacket. And to hardcore fans and critics, it's starting to seem like it's guy who does terrible things, but it's okay. He's attractive. So, why do I say we need more bad girls? Well, I feel like the insert bad prefix person trope is basically a shorthanded version for saying a complex character, regardless of gender, who has their own motivations for doing something, and either through character exploration or understanding, we can both sympathize them while also making sure their actions are something that aren't too irredeemable, and even their actions, if they're not the right choice, do make sense and doesn't cross the line. Some people have debated on certain names for the tropes. Manic Pixie Dream Girl for some, but the problem is that I feel like people call the Magic Pixie Dream Girl is any girl who has a personality, when in reality, the main problem with that trope comes down to the fact that sometimes the guy kind of mistreats the girl even though she's the one that's been helping him. Remember Stargirl, where Leo basically treated her like crap and then broke up with her as due to peer pressure, despite the fact that she was probably the best thing out of his life? When the real other issue is that the lead girl kind of just needs to be explored more and have her own flaws. But I don't hate that, like everyone else, because the Magic Pixie Dream Boy has shown to be really good when it comes to relationships. Last Christmas made some folks cry, and if you watch that movie, do not lie and tell me you didn't feel anything when you found out about the truth. But the reason I say we need more is because there's a lot of complexity to having a female character who's technically on the protagonist side, but they do things that show that they still have a lot of growth to do, and the effort for them to either own up to or resolve their mistakes actually makes them pretty compelling. Yet, for some, half the time they get hated whenever someone actually tries to explore their nuances. For example, let's take Amanda Rawlings from SVU. Valid arguments of copganda aside, despite being a cop, she has had issues with gambling and alcoholism, which has gotten her in trouble numerous times at a point where she literally got herself trapped in another operation she didn't realize at the time and ended up stopping an entire plot that took someone several months to infiltrate, and she basically solved it in less than a week out of nothing but desperation. She's been prone to self-sabotage, which has resulted in her having relationships with guys who are physically and emotionally unavailable or just downright awful, which is something she realizes that she got from her mother. Her family's entirely messed up, with her mom playing favoritism to her younger sister. Her younger sister is a con artist that has nearly gotten her in trouble at least 2 different times. Both of her parents are alcoholics. Her former boss in Atlanta basically coerced her and then tried to do the same thing to her replacement. And she had a nasty habit of either victim blaming women who got involved in adult content, or being blind to realize that some women are also culprits. And between seasons 13 and 27, we've seen her get help for her alcoholism and her gambling, which took a sharp decline after the heroes bailed her out of a situation. She started becoming more understanding towards female victims she used to blame. She's been involved in situations where she succeeded in de-escalating a guy about to cause a massacre, falls in love with Carisi after realizing he's basically the only man who has been there for her consistently and for her kids, and they end up married. She's also figured out suspects who falsely accuse innocent people, got herself out of a hostile situation, de-escalated a white supremacist, and her demotion in the main cast caused enough of an uproar that she was brought back as a regular for season 27. Naturally, with all of that, you would assume that she's one of the most beloved characters in the show, and a good example of the bad girl archetype done well, right? Look, the SVU fandom has a civil war about whether or not she's one of the best characters in the show, or one of the worst we've heard, with detractors accusing her of being slutty, having double standards, and the fact that her kids have different dads, despite the fact that one of the guys she hooked up with in the main cast also has kids with 2 different women. Being upset that her family is messed up, despite the fact that the Golden Boy stabler was also having issues with his family, including the fact that one of them was also a suspect. But it's gotten to the point where people actively hate her relationship with Carisi because they're white and boring. Meanwhile, you have people actively shipping her with criminals who have done awful things to women just because they saw hints of romantic chemistry. This is a show about solving sex crimes? Yeah, I've lost the plot. I'm going to be completely nice when I say this, but if you swap Carisi and Amanda's genders, Carisi would be praised as this deep, nuanced, interesting character with a bunch of layers and complexity, while Amanda would be seen as the golden girl, only for people to complain she's too good and innocent. And I think maybe if we had more complex women like this in fiction, maybe certain attitudes and perspectives will start to switch and change. Okay, so what's an example of a series you think crossed the line to not make this trope work? Well, I'd say if you gender swapped any of Colleen Hoover's protagonists, yes, that would count. But in terms of someone who went too far, that would be the FMC from Peephole, or Anna Satsujin, which is about a shut-in named Kurosu who doesn't value life, who falls in love with a college student that's his neighbor, Ryo Miyachi, who's revealed to quickly be a murderer and ruthless serial killer. Pretty interesting, a guy who starts to value life falling for someone who doesn't value it. Well, I found a live-action movie, My Girlfriend is a Serial Killer, and it loosely adapts around like the first 20% of the story with a somewhat decent end. At the time, I was mixed, so I decided to binge a summary of the manga and read the last 50 chapters. I did not hate it as much as I thought I would, but I got issues with the execution, especially with the ending, since most people agree it should have ended at chapter 80. The major problem I have with Miyachi is that she doesn't really have a fixed morality beyond killing people. Yeah, she targets criminals, but also left-handed people for some reason. And in the manga, she kills one of Kurasu's acquaintances. And in the manga, she also kills a police officer who did nothing wrong because she doesn't see cops as people. And socio-political debates aside, he was trying to solve the case of the murderer she was also after, and ended up working with the recurring cop anyway. The funny part is that the film actually made this more morally balanced, because it turns out his acquaintance was torturing animals, and Miyachi's more focused on targeting criminals, with the climax condensing the gang plot with the co-plot, with Miyachi ultimately deciding to value Kurasu's life and just focus on killing the actual obstacles. And while she does stab him, they still actually end up falling in love and decide to, properly have a good relationship. As for why the second half is controversial, Kurochi is fatally injured, and Kurasu similarly kills her after they stop the cult leader's interest in her, and her allies learn the truth. She lost her memories of everything that happened, and Kurasu ends up trying to stop the cult leader's close friend to trying to enact a twisted vision of making Miyachi their messiah, resulting in the finale where all of the main and supporting characters die. Miyachi recovers her memories, and her and Kurasu end up taking each other's lives out, only for Reina to reveal that they had a baby that grew in a coma, and they regret that decision that they made as they pass away. Thematically, it's interesting, but it comes too late. Had Miyachi awakened from her coma and gained a split personality with her past self and her current self having no clean slate, and Kurasu willing to kill to stop trying to use those as a role reversal, then revealed they had a kid earlier, with them contemplating at the end, and either trying to atone for their sins or dying saving the people who helped them stay alive while ensuring their legacy keeps their kid alive. I think that would have worked better, because I don't hate Miyachi, but I feel like she and people could have worked a lot stronger with just a few tweaks. Let's move on to something more lighthearted. Kazuhana might be a surprise for those in the delinquent romance genre, but she's kind of a more grounded example of this trope. For context, for those unfamiliar, Kuzuhana is the main love interest of the manga's protagonist, and they go to a school where it's one guy and 359 girls. And the protagonist, Haruka, has been struggling with the fact that the school used to be a girls-only school, and in the first chapter, his fellow school committee member frames him as a pervert and blackmailing him for money, if other girls offering to assist her via the recording, and that's when Kuzuhana joins in for the jump for the save where she sleeps, kicking and retrieving the phone out of the committee girl's hands and deleting the images and videos. And after accidentally knocking him out and scaring the girls off, it turns out she's a bit blunt and struggles with her emotions thanks to her abrasive nature. But after he thanks her for being the only girl that actually tries to protect them and be a decent person, and admitting that he finds her cute, she starts developing feelings for him, and she promises to protect him in any tough scenarios he finds himself in. What makes Hanako Kazuryu interesting as a romantic interest and a bad girl is that she fits the original intention. Someone who is seen as an outcast or dangerous, but is a well-meaning or understanding person who's not afraid to play outside of the rules. The other girls are afraid of her because of her physical strength and her height, but the main cast starts to value her once they get to know her. She has a reputation for beating up 100 people, but the reason was that her best friend was bullied to the point of transferring schools to escape it. And that resulted in her mom kicking her out of the dojo. And her feelings for Haruka are genuine, but she's worried about her enemies using him to get to her. I only have a few problems with Kuzuhana. One, the story kind of neglects her during some arcs of the manga as more girls get more focus. And the mangaka might save bringing back her friend for our plotline later. But I still like Kuzuhana, or at least Hanako Kazuryu. Yoonji Woo from My Name is actually a good example of this. Her father was murdered and she ended up working for a crime boss who was her father's close friend, who trains her and guides her to be a mole in the police force. And the driving question is if she's willing to become a monster to get revenge, and Ji Woo becomes torn between her loyalties, especially with her love interest on the force, and both groups' connections to her father. And she works as a character because she's fighting terrible people while searching for her revenge. And when she has to hurt people along the way, she never does anything to put her allies at intentional risk. And her character arc revolves around how she handles the truth and the consequences of that choice. Also, speaking of Vigilante, South Korean dramas, where the heck is season 2 of Vigilantes? It's been 3 years. And making content ain't easy. Even writing a book takes about 2 years to be published if you get lucky. Speaking of which, we got a recent series, Fute no Olympia. Disclaimer, cheating is bad. Alright, so we got an average office worker who gets mistreated by everyone, including his wife he assumes might be cheating on him with his coworker. Spoilers, it's not they're related. But his daughter also treats him like dirt, and yet his coworker invites him to move some equipment, and she blackmails him to go to a sports gym in order to help him exercise and get in shape. Definitely an interesting way to offer some free gym training, and it's helping. Plus, she helps him out in the office as well. Here's the thing. She wasn't in love with him, but she's starting to fall in love with him, and his wife thinks that he might be cheating on her. There's 3 routes this story can go. A, the feelings become mutual and he leaves his wife for Ayase. B, his wife starts to also get personal training and his coworker realizes that she can't take his feelings away from someone. Or C, polygamy. I generally don't know what side to take. Ayase did blackmail him, but her goals are malicious. She sneaks into his house to check up on him, but she gives him solid advice. She trained someone else, but he got aggro after realizing she wasn't in love with him and tried to abuse her. But yeah, between her and the husband, the two are actually cute. But I don't think the wife is even that mean. She just needs to be more considerate. I've never been more torn on romantic or potential cheating plotline in my life, and I grew up in the era of love triangles. Okay, let's talk about the most interesting romance manga right now, Shihai Shoujo Kubaru-chan, because this has the possibility to go on a Satsujin's route, but so far I don't think it's that bad. Kiba wants to die, but a beautiful girl, Kubaru, tells him to give her his life and she'll make him happy as long as he follows her like a puppet. Thing is, while it's convoluted, I get the right balance of understanding and moral balance. She gets his bully off his back, stops another yandere, and decides to get them to hook up with her as some sort of semi-throuple. Her stance on love comes from her abusive dad messing up so bad mentally as a child. She doesn't know the difference between love to help someone and genuine fall in love with someone, which she's starting to get, but I only have a few worries. The whole cult that worships her kind of offs themselves after she confesses, which was a bit much for me, and the MC is starting to get a bit toxic in his desire to control her, which I think the story needs to kind of address, but so far I'm compelled by Kubaru, but I need to see how the story plays out for more judgments. Inner Mocha is actually not a bad choice either. While she's not evil, in Rosario Vampire, she's standoffish and intimidating, ruthless, and out of the heroes. Like, considering her future friends, like, she actually considered hurting them if she had to do so. This actually results in her having to grow a lot before she ends up falling for Sukune, and accepting that both her outer and inner selves actually cares about him and her friends. Plus, considering her family's a mess once you get to season 2 of the manga, she actually gets a bit of character development addressing that while also admitting that she really can't do this alone, which I appreciate. Living with a Kunoichi, or Oshinobi Dosei, has a questionable age gap between a 17-year-old high school ninja and Kotaro, a 23-year-old office worker, who are the rival ninjas of Iga and Koga and secretly live together, and they fell in love while their clans hate each other. And Tai is willing to murder even her own Koga clan people if they try to mess with her boyfriend. Yeah, the twist is they're already in love and they kind of needed to keep it a secret between their clans. And her bloodlust versus her love is an equal balance of funny and heartwarming because she lived her whole life before meeting him as a monster who basically felt lonely. And every time they fought, he'd at least see her as a person. And it's a contrast between her genuine feelings and her intense ninja training that just kind of works for me. And I want to explore this from a comedic lens because we've seen or explored this from police procedurals, romantic comedies, action K-dramas, dark romance, and shonen battle romances, as well as comedy romance. But remember I said perception also is a factor? That can actually apply really well to comedy and romance without there being too much drama behind it. But just enough. One of these is Kitazawa A-Class, where the protagonist was bullied for being fat, so he changed up his image by super bulking and hunking, and his love interest is his childhood friend, who was a child actress but got cancelled over false harassment allegations. And the fun part is, his repressed feelings are still there, but her feelings for him are actually genuine. I don't know what the perception of fake dating is amongst you all, but in my humble opinion, I think it can work. And for low-stakes romantic comedies, it works pretty damn well. No, seriously, this is one of the few times I've seen alternate love interests having romantic feelings for the lead hero and it not being handled terribly. I'm talking about a lot more about infidelity, a lot more than I anticipated when I started the script. And let's go from a romance about high schoolers to middle schoolers. Kazami Nagi is a normal boy when he's confessed to by Pseudo Ayame, and he accepts out of fear for his life since he thinks he's trying to bully him, only for her friends to come out and congratulate her. The whole joke is that he thinks that he's dating someone that wants to end his life, only for it to be anything but. And everything he thinks was a threat was just all the way she was trying to get something romantic out of the two of them. That's what I mean with the bad girl perception. You can handle the trope by seriously diving into the character's actions and motivations, but you can also explore it through a comedic lens because as people, we struggle with communication, and it's important that even the new generations learn and value the effort of honesty and just opening up your emotions. Now, let me know if you think Yidra from Red Ranger Isekai should count for this, but she's an anti-hero. Granted, I'd argue she was more of this at the start. She's opportunistic to the point where she can see her allies as genuine to means as it ends at times. She's judgmental to adventurers, condescending thanks to her magical skills, and she has a focus on revenge, but she generally wants to make the world a better place. Plus, it does help having a hero who can be morally gray at times, since it makes your love interest who appreciates the great qualities about them shine even more. But let's talk about two villains turned anti-heroes are neutral heroic, and those are Lachesis from Kamen Rider Gotchard and Mai from Avatar The Last Airbender. First up is Lachesis, and while I think her subplot as a hero needed more time to shine, I actually find her development pretty interesting. She starts off with her sisters as purely evil for the sake of spreading malice and opening the door of darkness, and despite the ambiguous nature of their humanity until we learn their homunculi, her victims and sadism tended to target people who are more emotionally vulnerable, such as going after Renee and Hotaro in the cave after they told them that Renee's dad actually died, then going after the woman whose boyfriend dumped her, and later Boruto out of intrigue and his spite, then becoming a church nun to target a toxic dad. She was the most interested in humanity out of the three siblings, especially when Spanda would interrupt her plans as she grew a fascination with the mutt defining her goals. Then when her abusive dad showed up, turned her into an experiment, merging with her against her will, and targeted her boy toy target by reviving his dead loved ones. Even she was concerned and tried to defect, eventually joining the heroes to help Minato get to motivate the students. And while she keeps that deceptive nature, she's still trying to find a way to get her sisters to turn a new leaf by becoming human, befriending the other alchemists for a bit, and protecting them before trying to get Spanda to value his life, and join the people who he cares about. And succeeded, before she died. While I think we needed more time with her subplot to be a main plot, at least for an episode, I feel like the reason her redemption works is because the heroes and villains are basically trying to capture creatures who are pure in terms of their intentions, but dangerous when put in the wrong hands. And since they just want to create monsters combating the creatures and humans in order to awaken the door of darkness, outside of fighting the heroes, they don't really do anything that crosses the line. Okay, granted they killed Shiori, but she was like already betraying the Heroes organization in the first place, and Athropo was the one who did that. Okay, and the English teacher, but let's blame that one on Dread. And finally, we get to Mai, the girl forced by her parents to be quiet in order to keep her appearances, so she ended up having no enjoyment in anything other than her crush on Zuko, becoming just as apathetic as her parents accidentally intended her to be. Not to mention, she really only helps out Azula because she really has nothing better to do, and it was kind of forced into a friendship with her to curry favor with the Fire Lord. Like, there's at least 2 times where there's opportunity for a fight, and she doesn't even think it's worth it, without even caring what Azula's response is going to be. Again, I know people tend to point out the fact that the Fire Nation was technically a genocide of villainous organization, but remember, there is nuance to the fact that not everyone in the group or organization is as malicious as the people at the top spearheading it. And when it comes to the person that she loves over the person that she was told to follow, she tore that friendship up. And it shows that while you can be an antagonist or a villain for a intentionally evil goal, you can do that without crossing the line or starting out evil and becoming good. Plus, I love Zuko more than I fear you is still iconic to this day. Also, stop shipping Zuko with Katara just because you prefer spice and romantic tension. Let the damn introverts be happy together. So, was this video meant as a way to address and combat the fact that we have way too many uses of romanticized abuse and possessive controlling dudes presented as attractive when in reality no one would like them if they look like Donnie DeVito? Like I said, what bad boys are seen as now has become so diluted that I feel like addressing and having more bad girls instead would actually improve all types of stories. We can have heroines who mess up and go through hardships and insecurities while maturing and finding love. We can have heroines who have made mistakes in their lives that lead them to doubt themselves and still finding the right people around them. We can have heroines whose morals are understandable even if we don't agree with them 100% of the time, including their actions. We can have heroines who are mentally messed up but are still interesting to watch without crossing a line. We can have interesting heroines that shatter expectations and deconstruct the labels placed on them. And we could have villainesses who are sympathetic and their bad natures are what elevate them to develop and change. Anyway, if you made it this far, type bad girl to deserve love too. Anyway, thank you all for watching and for giving me the time to get this video since it took way too long. Anyway, BIP of our introductions, signing off.